بسم الله.
زي العادة أسئلة وهاي حفظتيهم أنت هلا.
ذكريني إذا شيء.
بس أنا بس أذكرك مش تقولي لي لا أنا عم بحكي بتكفي باللي بدك إياه، لأنه مرتين صارت أقول لك لا مش هاي هديكي تيجي أنت تكفي باللي كنت
لا بكون أنا ناوي يعني هي اللي بتقولي لا.
إيه بس إن أنت بتكوني عم تحكي شيء أنا ما بدي أترجمه، عرفتي؟ لأنه مثلا أحيانا في أشياء ما منيح إنه أترجمها، أنا بقطعك قصدا عشان ما تكفي، عرفتي؟ عشان الفلسطينية بفهموها بس الأمريكان ما بفهموها، فأنا بضطر إني أقطعك وأقول لك لا احكي لنا كذا، عرفتي كيف؟ هي هيك القصة بس عشان إنه هن ما بفهموا علينا.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. I just wanted to greet everyone again. Once again, my name is Charles Woods, and I'm the Education Programs Manager here at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. I want to welcome you to the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute on behalf of our President and CEO, Ms. Andrea Taylor. We are very excited to welcome you to our community conversation. Here at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, we want to foster dialogues and conversations about difficult issues and topics. The Institute is forever neutral when these type of conversations come up. We never take a position, whether it's about religion, immigration, or politics. We strive to be the place and or the space to have these tough discussions. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our main program. Mr. Farouk. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So welcome back and تقبل الله. Louder. طيب. So now we're gonna head to Akram's story. She's gonna tell us about her experience, how the life was back in Palestine before being exiled. Throughout her story, I'm going to be leading her. I'm going to be asking her some questions in Arabic. I won't be translating these questions, but I am going to be translating what Akram is going to say. So let's start. يلا حشي خبرينا أنت من وين واحكي لنا عن قرية الزيب كيف كانت.
تعرف عن حالي؟
قولي أنا اسمك مريم ومن وين أنت؟
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا فيكم بالحضور، شرفتونا. أنا اسمي مريم فتح الله عبد الحميد، فلسطينية من قرية اسمها الزيب قضاء عكا.
My name is Maryam Fathallah. I am from Palestinian village called Zib.
قريتنا بفلسطين، بشمال فلسطين على حدود لبنان.
The village was in the north of Palestine, right next to the Lebanese border.
وصفها انه هي على شط بحر، البحر محاوطها لف داير متن دار.
The village was right next to the sea, and it was surrounded by the sea water.
بلدنا يعني قرية بس كتير منيحة وكنا مبسوطين.
شو كانت تشتغل الناس هناك؟
عايشين بأرزاقنا بأملاكنا، عنا بساتين، عنا بيارات، عنا بيوت نزرع.
Many people there in the village were farmers. They had lands and fields.
نزرع خضرة، عنا بساتين ليمون، مشمش، من جميع الفاكهة.
We had all sort of vegetables and fruits planted in the village.
عنا موسم زيتون كتير يعني قوي ناجح.
And they also used to plant olive trees.
وعنا البحر ثروة.
And since we had the sea also,
يعني اللي أكثر الشباب عنا أهل الزيب صيادين السمك، يعني
most of the men in Zib village were fishermen.
يصيدوا السمك ويجوا التجار من حيفا، من عكا، من القرى عكا، من كل أنحاء فلسطين يجوا يشتروا السمك ويأخذوه يعني.
And the fishermen from our village used to sell the fish to other villages or to nearby villages.
كنا عايشين كتير ومبسوطين وبأملاكنا بأرزاقنا.
احكي لنا عن شو كان في
حد الزيب من صوب عكا، يعني إبلية الزيب، بس على الحدود بالضبط، حدود أرض الزيب كان في مستعمرة اسمها نهاريا.
Right next to Zib village, between our village and Akka, the main city, there was a settlement called Naharia settlement.
كنا احنا وياهن ما في أي مشكلة قبل النكبة.
Right before Nakba, before all the conflicts started, there were no problems between us and the settlers.
كنا عايشين أكننا بلد وحدة.
We used to live like just one big town.
كتجارة، كشغل، كان نروح عند نشتري، نتعالج عند دكاترة. بذكر اسم الدكاترة، واحد اسمه نتان وواحد اسمه كيوي. واحد كيوي وواحد نتان، دكاترة صحة. وكان في دكتورة اسمها مريم، دكتورة نسائية، يولدوا يتعالجوا.
So we had perfectly fine relationships with the settlers in Naharia. We used to go for them for medication. We used to go there to get to do shopping. I also still remember the names of the doctors that used to be in Naharia. One is Natan, the other is Kiwi, and there was a gynecologist called Maryam.
كنا كبلد واحد، يعني في بيناتنا زيارات. إذا صار عندنا فرح عرس نعزمهن يجوا يحضروا عراسنا.
And whenever we used to have a wedding in our village, they used to come over and celebrate the wedding with us.
هذا قبل النكبة.
That's all before the Nakba.
بس صارت بفلسطين الحركات والمجازر اللي صارت بدير ياسين وبالأسطل وبالبلاد، نسمع فيها، هي بعيدة عن بلدنا، بس نسمع إنه في مجازر خوفت العالم.
Things started to change and we started to hear about massacres happening all over Palestine, like Deir Yassin massacre. I will explain what Nakba is during the presentation. That's the whole point of the thing.
يوم يعني كم يوم هيك احنا بلدنا بودوا ارزاقهن من البساتين، من فاكهه، من خضر، يعني بالشاحنات على حيفا وعكا بتنباع.
As I told you, the villagers used to get all their products, crops, fish, and go to the main cities of Akka and Haifa in order to sell them there.
مارقين الشاحنات ما هم مساء بنهار يمتنا الشارع العام حيفا بيروت مارق من قدام البلد وهن من قدام نهاريا.
So the trucks leaving Zib village had to pass in front of the main entrance of Naharia settlement in order to get to the cities of Akka and Haifa.
حاجز على باب نهاريا رابط بس مرقوا الشاحنات الثلاثة اللي لأهل الزيب اليهود وقفتن.
There was a checkpoint right in front of Naharia settlement. This checkpoint stopped the trucks, 3 trucks leaving the village.
وقفتن ونزلت الركاب لأنه مع كل من مع نقلته بالسيارة بالشاحنة بيروح معها مشان ببيعها. نزلوهن كان العدد 10.
They were 10 men in the 3 trucks.
نزلوهن قتلوهن وحرقوا الشاحنات الثلاثة.
The settlers by the checkpoint forced all the men to leave the trucks. They killed all 10 men and then they burned down the trucks.
في شاحنات 2 كمان للزيب وماخذين بضاعة يبيعوها بحيفا. شافوا الدخان وسمعوا القواس لما صاروا شوي قراب على محل الحادث.
Then 2 other trucks were following. They heard the bullets and saw the smoke.
سألوا شو في قالوا لي ال3 شاحنات اليهود حرقتن وقتلت اللي بقلبن.
They started asking around what happened, what's that smoke? They found out the story of the 3 trucks.
طبعا رجعوا على الزيب الشاحنات ال2 وعطوا خبر. اجى الصليب الأحمر أخذ القتلة وجابن على البلد.
So the 2 trucks, they returned back to the village and to warn us, and the Red Cross went to get the dead bodies.
غيبوها شيء أسبوع أو 10 أيام يعني هيك شيء.
After a week or 10 days.
عندنا إحنا البلد القديمة كبرت والناس يعني كذا. عندنا الرمل واسع. الرمل صاف بيننا وبين نهاريا يعني بين البلد القديمة وبين نهاريا. كفي. كله عمار يعني جديد. اجوا اول ما اجوا في واحد من بلدنا بيقولوا له ابو موسى عنده غنم وعنده السيره طبعا ما هي بعيده عن البلد على الرمل. اجوا اليهود بالليل قتلوا الرجال وقتلوا الراعي. كانت مرته موجوده.
So Zib village has expanded over time. And there was the old part of the town and the new part of the town, or the village. The new part of the village was the closest to Naharia settlement. After a week or 10 days, the settlers from Naharia came over the new part of the town. There was a man in that area. His name was Abu Musa. They broke into his house and they killed him. They killed also a shepherd who was working for him.
مرته لأبو موسى لما شافت هالشوفة تخبت بالدخون.
But his wife, she saw what happened to her husband and to the shepherd. She managed to hide inside the chimney.
صاروا اليهود يفتشوا عليها يقولوا مدام وين راح هي سمعتن بس إني ما شايفينها متخبيين.
And she heard the settlers looking for her inside the house and asking, Madame, where are you? We want you. But she just kept hiding inside the chimney.
هن صاروا ينتقلوا من بيت لبيت يقتلوا.
And then they started moving from one house to another, killing people inside the houses.
صحيت العالم على صوت الرصاص وعلى الضجة. هربوا وين على الزيب القديمة.
So people in the new part of the town woke up because that happened in the middle of the night. They woke up and they ran away into the old part of the town.
طبعا في شباب هيك مع سلاح خفيف جدا يعني ما خرج للمقاومة بس إنه ليردوا يعوقون شوي لتهرب العالم.
So the young men in the old part of the village had really light weapon at that time. It was not good for resisting or anything or protecting, but they needed something in order to delay the settlers from getting into the people where the people were hiding.
ويبعتوا خبر يقولوا للناس إنه اهربوا لأنه ما فينا نقاوم ما في
So
سلاح.
these men with the light weapons started to tell us, just run away, flee for your life, escape your lives, because we're not able to defend you or protect you, but we will only try to delay them from getting to you.
كانت الهريبة عن طريق الفلوكة بالبحر. إحنا بحرية وفلوكة كتير.
Most of the villagers in Zeb had boats, so most of us escaped through boats or on boats.
تركب النسوين الأطفال. طبعا كان يعني الصريخ حالة كتير مزعجة.
It's some sort of a hysterical scene. Everybody was just yelling and getting onto the boats in order to flee their lives.
هربت العالم اللي مشي اللي بالسيارة اللي بالفلوكة بالبحر.
Some people did not manage to get into their boats, so they fled on foot or by cars.
واللي انقتل في واحد كاين بالبساتين، ولما عرف انه في اجتياح الاسرائيلي اجى عزيب من طريقة يعني غير ما في اليهود كانوا، هي لمداخل كتير، اجى على بيته ما لقاش حدا بالبيت، قالوا له مرتك راحت بالفلوكة بالبحر هربت.
I still remember a story of a man. He was in the fields when all the invasion happened. And he got back home. He figured out what was happening. He heard the bullets and all that. So he went back home. He didn't find anybody in the house. He asked around, and everybody told him that your wife and kids ran away on the boats.
راح لقى قاعدة بالشخطورة، قال لها وين الأولاد؟ قالت له هياهن. قال له والولد الصغير من عجقتها ومن الخوف حامل اللي بخدي، عندها ولد بيبي رضعي.
So when he arrived to the boat and he found his wife, he asked her, where are the kids? So she said, the kids are here. And he told her, so where is the baby? So she told him, he's right in my lap. But when she looked at her lap, she found the pillow. She was holding a pillow instead of her son. So because she was so afraid, she didn't realize that she was holding the pillow, not her son, her baby son.
لأنه الخوف بالعائل شوي قال لها هاي المخدي وين الولد؟ قالت له ما بعرف، أنا على علمي هذا الولد. ركض رجع على البيت جاب الولد.
So he ran back to the house, he got the baby and got back to the boat.
بعده عايش بسوريا.
And this kid is still alive. He is now in Syria.
والعالم هربت. وين اجينا على الحدود صاروا ينقلونا. اول بلد بتلاقينا صور على الحدود.
So Lebanon was right on the border of Palestine, and that's why we ended up in Lebanon.
نرجع للمرة اللي اتخبت وهربت.
لا ما بدنا نرجع لها، خلينا نكفي، ما فينا نرجع هلا.
المهم اجينا على لبنان، بس صار لكل بلد بالقضاء عنا قضاء عكا نفس العملية، من تنقلوا من بلد لبلد نفس الطريقة اللي انعملت عنا انعملت ببلد تانية. من الكابر عدنا بلاد كتير ضيع.
So the same thing that happened in our village in Zeb happened to all the villages nearby us.
اجينا على لبنان على صور العالم كلها مهجرة، مش بس من بلدنا طبعا من جميع البلاد.
And that's how all of us from various villages ended up in Lebanon.
اللي ينام بالشارع، اللي بالكنائس، اللي بالجوامع، اللي بالمدارس.
There were no enough spaces for us, so people started to sleep on the streets, in schools, or in churches.
طبعا العالم ما في شيء قويها ولا معها شيء تقدر تستعمله.
And at that point, when we escaped our lives, we didn't take anything with us from our houses.
تولى أمرنا الصليب الأحمر، صار يعطينا حرامات، يعطي
So
الأولاد الأطفال.
the Red Cross started to deliver blankets for us because we absolutely had nothing.
من كتر كثافة المهجرين بصور عملوا مخيم بصيدا، هو مخيم عين الحلوة اللي أنا هسه ساكنة فيه.
After a while, after the while that the time that people spent in a city called Sur that was right on the border, the city got really overpopulated, and then the Red Cross established a refugee camp for us in another city called Saida, which is Ain al-Hilwi refugee camp. That's where I live right now.
قالوا للناس يلي بريد يجي على في عملنا مخيم بعين الحلو بصيدا يروح. والله احنا من اللي راحت ناس كتير طبعا، واحنا ناس منين لقينا الخيم منصوبة.
When we arrived to Ain al-Hilwi refugee camp, we found the tents already set up for us, ready for us.
منصوبة بأرض تراب كاينة مزروعة ومحصودة. لما تشت الدنيا يعني تعذبنا كتير الحقيقة.
The tents were set up on dirt.
من كثافة المهجرين العيلة الصغيرة يحطوا عيلتين بخيمة. الخيمة
And because there was a large number of refugees, each two families would get one tent.
عملوا لنا حمامات شركة.
قبل ما تقولي لنا محمد، احكي لنا كيف كنتوا مثلا بقلب الخيمة، كيف كنتوا قاعدين؟
مثلا في عيلتين من نصها ما في، بنقول له دريك احنا يعني العمود تبع الخيمة هيك، نحط حبل وملائط غسيل، نجيب الحرام نقطع النظر بيننا وبين اللي قاعد معنا.
So in order to get privacy, the two families would put a blanket in the middle of the tent so that each family has its own privacy.
لو بدنا نعمل أكل ما في معنا الشيء اللي نعمله، صاروا يجيبوا لنا أكل خبز يعطوا يعني للناس، حليب للأطفال. هاي هيئة الأمم والصليب الأحمر.
So and then the Red Cross would deliver to us humanitarian aids, food and all that.
شوي شوي صاروا يعطونا حرامات أو
هلا عن الحمامات والمي إذا بدك.
يعني عملوا لنا حمامات شركة والمي حوز وصف هيك حنفيات.
قديش بعيد الحمامات عن هاي؟
أطراف المخيم.
قديه كان لازم تمشي؟
بقلبه يعني بنمشي شوي هيك.
شي 10 دقايق؟
يعني تقريبا.
So and we didn't have restrooms in the tents. Obviously, there were shared restrooms, public restrooms at the sides of the camp. Then we had to walk for 10 minutes in order to get to use the restroom.
والخزانات المي بين الخيم، يعني مثلا كل هيك مسافة شوي عملوا لنا خزان وحنفيات نروح نملى على الدور.
And then we had water tanks in the refugee camp that we had to stay in line in order to get water.
شوي شوي صاروا يعطونا ببور نستعمله لشغلات هيك خفيفة اللي نقدر يعني الواحد يعمل له شغل يطبخها ببيته. وبعدين لما سكننا هيك شوي بالشوادر، صارت الغارات الإسرائيلية كل يومين 3 غارة على المخيم.
After a while, the Israelis started to bomb and to shell the refugee camp.
ما في شيء يحمينا، يعني كلها خيمة شريطة، ما في حماية. مرة عملوا غارة كتير قوية.
And as you know, we were staying in tents, and the tent is just fabric, and this could not possibly protect us.
كانت كتير قوية، روحت كل شيء خيم، كل شيء كله راح. قد ما هي الغارة كبيرة.
Once they started to bomb the camp heavily, and everything was just destroyed.
هاي الغارة كانت كبيرة كتير. يستنوا شوي إن يعملوا الغارة، يستنوا شوي يعرفوا إنه راح نضب المجاريح والقتلى اللي تكون من وراء الغارة. يرجعوا بعد 10 دقايق نفس الغارة بالمحل ذاته.
So what they used to do,
عالم أكتر.
what they did at that time, they would leave people. They would bomb an area, and then when people would come to help anybody at that place, at that area, they would wait for 5 minutes, and the Israelis would bomb again the same area to make sure that they have killed as much as possible, or as many as possible.
الشباب صاروا ينادوا بمكبرات الصوت إنه العالم تروح تهرب على الجامع.
People started to call over each other to go and hide inside the mosque because it was the only building in the camp.
لأنه الجامع بطون وحجارة، يعني بيدري أكثر من الخيمة ما بتدري.
So maybe it might be able to protect us more than just a tent.
أبوي طلع لأنه يهرب على الجامع، إحنا بيتنا على الشارع. الشارع شيء رهيب، كان القتلة بالطريق، المجاريح.
My father was trying to reach the mosque. When he got outside where he was living, he saw all people just scattered and killed, injured people all over the road.
شاف شوفة رهيبة في مرة نايمة، إجا اللي بينقذ القتلة والمجاريح ما مسكها هيك من إيدها إلا طلعت الإيد بإيد اللي عم بسعف، وهي ضلت نايمة بالأرض ميتة مقتولة.
So my father saw a woman lying on the land, and a man was trying to help her. So the moment the man was trying to hold her hand, her arm, all of her arm was ripped off and from the shoulder, and it turned out that she was severely injured in the shoulder, and the woman already was dead. And my father saw that.
ساعتها الشوفة كانت كتير رهيبة، وقتلة بالطريق، وأولاد تصرخ ونسوان تصرخ من الغارات والقتلة اللي صارت. الواحد تشوف اللي إلها مقتول ما تسترجي تضل موجودة، لأنه الكسف الغارات.
شو صار بعدين؟
أبوي لما أخذوه الشباب على الجامع تغير، العرق صار يكت وقلب أحمر وحالته
تعبانة. So when my father arrived to the mosque, he started to get tired and his color changed. He started to sweat.
بعد شي نص ساعة قال لي بدوني على المستشفى، على صيدا في مستشفى بقولوا له فؤاد عسيران. شافوا الدكتور نيموا، ما فيش نص ساعة إلا هو توفى. قال لي انتوا تاخدونيش على مستشفى في مجاريح، يعني ما هو من خوفه ما قد ما شاف مجاريح وكلها باخدوه على المستشفيات.
When he got really tired, he asked the people to take him to a hospital, but he said, please don't take me to a place or to a hospital where there are injured or killed people. I can't stand seeing that anymore.
أخذوه على مستشفى فؤاد عسيران، نص ساعة اللي هو توفى. أعطى تقرير طبي الدكتور إنه هو ما طاله رصاص ولا طاله شيء، بس صار عنده هبوط بالقلب توفى هيك من الخوف.
We managed to get him into a hospital that had no injured or killed people, but after half an hour he didn't make it. He passed away, and according to the medical report, he passed away because he was facing problems in his heart because of all the things he saw.
اللي صار ببلدنا صار بأي بلد نفس الشيء، بكل فلسطين تقريبا.
And it is not the story of my village only, it is the story of most of them or all the villages and towns in Palestine.
احنا بعدين العالم على مع الوقت صارت تفتش على شغل، يعني لو مهندس يشتغل بقص الليمون بده يعيش.
So we spent so much time there, so people had to find jobs to make living. So some people would be engineers or be well educated, but they couldn't find a job, so they would work as farmers.
احنا في واحد غني عنده فيلا بالمونتوفيردي بجبل لبنان منطقة بيت مري، يعني مصايف.
But as for us, my husband worked for a wealthy man in a house outside Beirut.
يعني أبو أكرم يدير باله على جنينة مزارع، الشجر جنينة الزهور
My
هيك.
husband's job was to look after the man's garden.
قعدنا فيها 15 سنة.
We spent 15 years in that place.
يوم والله أبو أكرم نزل يصلي بالجامع ببيروت.
Once Abu Akram, my husband, went to Beirut downtown in order to pray.
ينزل يصلي الجمعة
He went to
ببيروت.
pray Friday prayer.
وهو طالع استحلى بردان منظره كتير عجبه. قام اشترى كمية يعني قليلة طبعا.
After he finished the prayer, he was walking through the market and he saw oranges. So he wanted to buy some. He went to buy some.
شوي اجى عنا ضيوف من اخواننا المسيحية اصحابنا يعني اجوا ضيوف من بيروت ومن جيراننا قعدوا قمت انا.
After a while, when Abu Akram finally arrived home, after a while we were joined by our friends. They were Christian and they were our neighbors also, so they came over.
جبت من هالبردقان وضيفت يعني حطيت.
So I got some of the oranges that Abu Akram had got in order to serve our guests.
وبيجي لي ابو اكرم عم يضحك ويمزح مع جيراننا ومع اللي اجوا من
And everybody
بيروت.
was just laughing and talking and chatting, and Abu Akram, of course, too.
قشر حبة مثلين وقعد ياكلها.
But then Abu Akram grabbed a piece of oranges and he started to eat it.
أكل أول ما داقها إلا هو صفن هيك وصار يبكي.
But the moment he put the orange in his mouth, he started to cry.
سألوه قالوا له إسا كنت عم تضحك ومبسوط وشو اللي بكاك شو جنيت.
So his friends asked him, Abu Akram, what happened to you? You were just talking and laughing with us. What happened to you? Why did you start to cry?
قال لي هالبردان ذكرني بفلسطين.
He said, these oranges reminded me of Palestine.
هذا البردان من فلسطين.
And these oranges are from Palestine.
صاروا يضحكوا عليه زيادة. قالوا له
But
شو
everybody started to laugh at him.
اللي فيه بردان بلبنان. شو جاب بردان فلسطين على لبنان.
They told him, how would it be possible for oranges from Palestine make it into Lebanon? At that point, Palestine was under the occupation and the oranges were not allowed into Lebanon. So how would the oranges end up in Lebanon?
قال لي ما تقنعوني هذا البردان أو من الزيب أو من بردان يافا.
But he insisted. He said, these oranges are either from Zib or from Jaffa.
ضحكوا عليه وقاموا قعدوا شوي راحوا كل واحد راح على بيته. تاني يوم اللي بيته ببيروت إلا وجايب هالجريدة بإيده وجاي دق
But the very
علينا
next day,
بكير.
now at the end, everybody left home, left to their houses, and the very next day in the early morning, the same man who was sitting with us, he came knocking at our door and holding a newspaper.
قال له شوف اقرا.
He handed the newspaper to Abu Akram and said, read.
ضحكنا عليك امبارح وانت معك حق بس
We laughed
أنا
at you yesterday, but it turned out that you were right.
لأنه بالصحف كاتبين إنه جاي وثقة كبيرة من فلسطين بردقان وانباعت ببيروت.
Because in the newspapers it said that a large amount of oranges made it from Palestine into Lebanon and they were being sold in Lebanon.
احتجوا اللبنانية إحنا ما في إلين ضمان وهيك. احتجوا إنه طيب إحنا برداننا شو بنعمل فيه لما بيجي بردان فلسطين برداننا ما عاد له قيمة. بس أنا إلى كان لنا 22 سنة طالعين من فلسطين بهداك الوقت. قال له بس بدي أعرف شو عرفك إنه البردان كله واحد.
So he asked him, you have left Palestine 22 years ago. I just want to understand, how were you able to recognize the oranges and to know that they are from Palestine?
قال له من طعمته ريحته هذا بعد ما طعمته بردان فلسطين ما بنساه.
So he said, Abu Akram, my husband said, I could recognize it from its taste, from its smell, from how it looks. I would never ever forget about the Palestinian oranges.
قال له لكان يا فلسطينية ما عليكم خوف إذا طعمت الليمون ما ناسينا مش راح تنسوا فلسطين.
So he said, then now I can say, I am sure that if you Palestinians were not able to forget about a simple orange, I am really sure that you will not be able to forget about your homeland, Palestine.
فلسطين مين بنساها الأم الحنونة وطننا غالي علينا.
It is our homeland, and we would never be able to forget about it.
نسأل الله العودة إن شاء الله.
And we ask God that someday we will return. Okay. And thank you.
شكرا.
Thank you for listening to her stories. That's what she's saying. So now, in order to understand what Nakba is and to understand why all of that happened, I'm going to give this really short presentation about Nakba. So we have, in order to understand why all of that happened, we have to go back in time to the 1800s. To Europe. Does anybody know what was happening in Europe back in the 1800s? You guys are free. When I ask, you are free to answer. I like it to be an interactive presentation. And it gives me time to drink. So, in the 1800s, Europe was witnessing the outbreak of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism started in Eastern Europe, and then it spread all over Europe. And that's when Theodor Herzl came. He was the founder of the political form of Zionism. He was trying to find a solution for the Jewish problem, for what he called the Jewish problem. And he suggested that the best thing or the best way to save the Jews from the pogroms that were taking place in Europe is to establish or to found the Jews a national home. He suggested that in his pamphlet, The Jewish State, that was published back in 1896, and he said that the best place to found or establish a national home for the Jews was Palestine. But at that point, in 1800s, Palestine was under which rule? The Ottoman Empire rule. So, and you guys know the Ottoman Empire was under which rule? What was the religion of the Ottoman Empire? So, yes, the Ottoman Empire was a Muslim empire. So why would the Jews leave Europe and go and live under an Islamic rule? I looked for the answer for this, and I found this paper that was written by Yosef Gorny, who is an Israeli intellectual, and he says that Jews enjoyed a higher standing in Muslim society and enjoyed a greater affinity with their surrounding than the Jews in Eastern Europe. And actually, some Jews call that time their golden era. So, and that's why basically they were okay to leave Europe and go live under the Ottoman Empire rule. Then in 1901, Christian Zionism came, and they started to spread the false slogan that Palestine was a land without people for people without land, in order to legitimize Zionism. But these photos were taken for Palestine during the 1800s and 1900s, and that's why Palestine was not, and that's why we say it is a false claim, because obviously people were still living were living in Palestine at that time. Then came the Balfour Declaration. What do you guys know about Balfour? So he was the Prime Minister of Britain. What also? He promised a Jewish land. What else? So, okay, I'm going to answer this. Balfour was a lord. He said he was the prime minister of the British government, and he also himself was an anti-Semite. He hated Jews, and he was the one who championed for the Aliens Act, which was a law that attempted to stop the Jewish immigration from Europe to Britain. So he thought that if he issued this promise, that he might be able to stop the Jews from getting into the UK and then get them to Palestine instead. It's not because he loved them. So in 1917, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration and supported the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine, and more Jewish immigration took place to Palestine. But in 1917, Palestine was under which rule? British? Who says the British? Actually, it is true. Palestine was under the Ottoman Empire rule. So basically, Balfour gave a promise of something he did not own at that time. Then, the initial plan was to found a national home for the Jews in Palestine. But how would they do that when up till 1947, the Jewish immigrants were only 1/3 of the population in Palestine? So how are they supposed to found a state for them in Palestine if they were only 1/3 of the population? And the answer came by David Ben-Gurion. He said, "I am for compulsory transfer, and I do not see anything immoral in that." And then later in 1948, the British mandate, the British occupation pulled out of mandatory Palestine. They left the whole Palestine question in the hands of the United Nations. At that point, the United Nations was only 2 years old. They were inexperienced, so they came up with the idea of dividing Palestine. They partitioned Palestine according to the 181 resolution, where they have given more than half of the land of historic Palestine for the Jewish immigrant and left the Palestinians with the rest. And at that point, Palestinians were still living in Palestine. So how are they going to start the state where Palestinians are still living in their houses and lands? And that's why massacres started to happen on the hands of the paramilitary Zionist units in 1948. They wanted to make sure to kill and kick out and exile as much Palestinians as possible in order to get the Jewish immigrants instead. And these are some of these massacres that took place in 1948 in Palestine. These are some of them, not all of them. Then in 1948, because of all the, you heard the story of Akram, Palestinians started to hear about all the massacres taking place. They started getting into people's, or raiding people's villages and houses and homes. So people just got really scared and had nothing else to do but to run away. What they basically did at that point, the paramilitary units, was they would go into a village, they would surround the village, and they would keep one escape for the people, which was the one to the north, so that they make sure people don't go back into Palestine. People have to go outside Palestine. And the ones who resisted and refused to leave were just killed. At that time, in 1948, more than 750,000 Palestinians fled Palestine to the neighboring countries of Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, and Syria. And when that happened, the whole thing, when it happened, that's what we call the Nakba, the catastrophe. It is the Arabic for catastrophe. But later in 1949, the United Nations issued a new declaration, which is the 194 Declaration, the right of return. It says that Palestinians who were exiled in 1948 have the right to return back not to Palestine, but to their lands and properties and houses in Palestine. For instance, Akram was exiled from Zib village, then she has to go back to Zib village and not to the West Bank or Gaza. My grandparents were exiled from Haifa, so I have to go back to Haifa and not to the West Bank or Gaza. Now, so as I told you, Palestinians fled to the neighboring countries, and that's why this explains why we have Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, West Bank, and Gaza. But since we came from Lebanon, and since the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon has the worst life conditions among all other Palestinian refugees, that's why we're going to tell you more about them. But first, you have to know that we have 12 Palestinian refugee camps all over Lebanon. There were more than 12, but some of them were wiped off, and I'll tell you how in one minute. And we have also 15 Palestinian gatherings. This is Ain al-Hilwi refugee camp. That's where Akram lives. Its area is 1 square mile, and its population is 100,000 Palestinian refugees living there. And since it is the biggest refugee camp in Lebanon, and that's why we call it the capital of diaspora. This is Burj al-Barajni refugee camp. Burj al-Barajni's area is 1/3 of a square mile, and its population is 50,000 refugees living there. We were 25,000 up till 2011, but then came the Syrian crisis, and Syrian refugees started to come over, and now we are 50,000 living on this really tiny area. As I told you, there was, am I going too fast? I'm trying to finish. Okay, good. So as I told you, there were more refugee camps than 12. This is Nabatiya refugee camp, or a photo of what we used to know as Nabatiya refugee camp. This camp was completely demolished by the Israelis in 1974. And this is Ain al-Hilwi refugee camp. It was destroyed completely by the Israelis. Once was in 1982, and it was rebuilt by Palestinian women, not men, because at that point there were no men inside the camps, and I'll tell you why in 1 minute. This is Rashidi refugee camp. It was targeted by the Israelis also, and this is Burj al-Shamali refugee camp, which was also targeted by the Israeli phosphoric bombs, resulting in more than 125 Palestinians being killed. Then we have Sabra and Shatila. Many people think that the Israelis had nothing to do with Sabra and Shatila massacres, which is not true. What happened was, back in 1982, the Israelis wanted to get rid of the Palestinian presence in Lebanon. So they invaded Beirut. They wanted to get rid of the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. They invaded Beirut. They started all these killings and all that. And then they came to an agreement. Now you have to pay attention for this one. So Palestinians, the PLO and the Israelis came to an agreement. It said that Palestinian fighters, PLO fighters, would leave Lebanon. All of them would leave Lebanon, and that's why we had no men in Ain al-Hilwi, and that's why women had to rebuild the camp. All men had to leave the refugee camps and Lebanon, and in return, U.S. government, the United States government, would guarantee the safety of civilians inside the refugee camps. But what happened was the Israelis sieged, they surrounded Sabra and Shatila camps. They are 2 camps in Beirut. They still exist till now. They surrounded the 2 camps. They did not allow anybody to leave the camp, and they did not allow anybody to go into the camp but a group of militia. This militia went into the camp and they started butchering and massacring people for 3 consecutive nights. And at night, the Israelis would throw light bombs in order for this militia to be able to continue killing the people so that they just kill as much as possible. And that happened on September 16, 1982, and resulted of more than 3,500 people, human being killed. They were Palestinian and Lebanese. Why did they do that? They already knew that no men were inside the refugee camps. Then Sharon said that the Palestinian woman and child are more dangerous than the man, because the Palestinian child's existence infers that generations will go on, but the man causes limited danger. And that's why they did what they did in Sabra and Shatila camp. And this is the last part. So we have been living in these refugee camps for more than 70 years, actually, 72 years. How are we living? Palestinians since we are in a civil rights institute, Palestinians in Lebanon are deprived of almost all of their civil rights. They are not allowed to work. Palestinians are not allowed to work in almost 72 professions. They cannot be doctors, they cannot be lawyers, they cannot be dentists, journalists, translators. Whatever you can think of, they cannot work. Most of them work in free labor or illegally. Then Palestinians also are not allowed to go into public schools. They mostly go to UNRWA schools, United Nations Relief and Work Agency schools. And also they have very limited health access to Lebanese public institutes. And also, Palestinians are not allowed to own properties outside the refugee camps. That was in 2001 when the Lebanese government issued a decree that stated all Palestinians are not allowed to own any properties in Lebanon, and any Palestinian who owned any property in Lebanon before issuing the decree, the property would go to the Lebanese government and not to their family members. And I know now you might be asking why the Lebanese government would be doing this. Why would they treat us like that? The answer is the Lebanese government is just afraid. They do not want to show the international community that they are okay with the Palestinian presence in Lebanon, because they know that if they show the world power, the international community, who is trying to get rid of the Palestinian refugee crisis, if they showed them that they are okay with our presence in Lebanon, then they would force the Lebanese people to resettle us in Lebanon, to give us the Lebanese citizenship, but which is something the Lebanese do not want, and us as refugees for the past 72 years, we do not want as well. Palestinians have lived their entire lives. 3 generations of Palestinians have been living inside these refugee camps, these really miserable refugee camps, because they believe that the only solution for all of their problems is the right of return, the 194 resolution, which is not subject to statute of limitations, and it is an individual right that no power, no authority is allowed to let go on our behalf. We believe that this is the only solution for all the misery that we have been talking about for the past 30 minutes. And not resettling, not immigrating, not throwing us in the desert or anything like that. The right of return is the only solution for the Palestinians. And thank you so much.
Yeah, hello. What is your status in Lebanon like for the Palestinian? What status do they carry?
Palestinians in Lebanon are refugees. We are stateless refugees, so we don't have any citizenship or any nationality. See, the Lebanese government says that So yeah, basically we are Palestinian refugees in Lebanon. We are stateless. We don't have any citizenship of any country.
So you say that you cannot get access to education, but you seem to have excellent education. You speak excellent English. I don't see any fault at all. So how did you get educated in these refugee camps?
You're just jealous. Yeah, so, you know, I think it's whenever there is a will, there is a way. Palestinians in Lebanon, most of them work illegally. They work under the table. My father had to work for 15 hours a day in order. He graduated as a petrochemical engineer, but he couldn't find a job in Lebanon, obviously, so he had to work for a company illegally. He had to work for 15 hours where, you know, an employee had to work for 8 hours, but since he's Palestinian, you know, his boss would be like, it's 15, or you don't want to, then just go away. And my dad had no other choice. And then whenever an inspector would come from the government to see if there are any illegal people working, my dad would go and hide in the basement. So yeah, that's the kind of hardship he had to go through in order to afford a good private education for me, so that at some point I would be able to do what I'm doing right now.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for this amazing presentation. Actually, it opened my eyes. We always hear about Palestine but the history people see from the internet and all that, but to hear from live from somebody who actually lived this experience while Palestine was a state, you know, on its own, it's really amazing. And what is that you are doing to actually let people know? Because I think in these days, you know, information can be spread out through the internet, but this kind of, I mean, alhamdulillah, she's alive, our mother, you know, sister. And what is that your plan is, if you can share some insights of the plan to spread this, about this information that you just shared?
What's the plan? Okay, so we are on this tour, basically in North America. Last year in 2017 and 2016, we had it in the US and in Canada. We are obviously trying to spread the word or raise awareness here in the US or in the West, and because we know that many people actually know about Palestine. They know about the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank in occupied territories 1948, but not about the Palestinian refugees, and that's how the whole thing came up. They don't know that there is something called the right of return that is only for the Palestinian refugees. So that's why we are trying to spread the word about the Palestinians on this tour, which reminds me also to mention that this tour runs 100% on donations. So we would appreciate any donations for us in order to keep going. We are still on our, now it is our second week, and it is a 9-week tour. So we're trying our best to make it comfortable for Akram so that she can do it till the end. And we also accept checks, and there are some flyers that show all kind of information about this this tour. So yeah, basically that's how it is. I hope this answered the question.
Say it again.
Can you speak about your NPR interview that you had, the radio interview?
It was a very short one. Yeah, it was just about the tour and how it was going. Yeah, there was no highlights from that interview. Yeah, there's someone there. Yeah, afwan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I have a question. How do you see yourself aligning with other groups within the United States, especially and within the West, who obviously there is no exact replication of what happened with Palestine, but at the same time, other groups that have experienced the effects of generational colonialism and the impact that this has had. Do you feel that finding solidarity with these groups that experience these issues here in the West helps to further gain understanding for what you're trying to accomplish?
I hope I have understood your question, but I see, Palestine is just another human issue. It is an issue of people struggling against colonialism, against others who are trying to ethnically cleanse them, which some people here, like the natives, have went through. We are also facing the issue of racism, which people also here have gone through. Actually, there is a group called Blacks for Palestine. We work together, and Palestinians in the camp and the black people here. So, and I really believe all people who are oppressed just share the same things. I do believe that the Jews in Eastern Europe, they were oppressed, and the Palestinians at that point, when they immigrated from Eastern Europe to Palestine, Palestinians would tell you how, old people would tell you how they opened their houses for them. They fed them, they welcomed them, because that you cannot not do that, because it's something humanitarian, and when you see someone who's struggling, that's the only thing you can do. So I think, I think I have answered what you were talking about. And I am really sorry. Wallahi, I didn't notice.
I have two questions. One goes to the slogan is a land without people for people without land. In the Arab tradition and the Palestinian tradition, we have a way of keeping our lineage. So the Arabic way of names is like the name of the person, the father, the grandfather, the great-grandfather, and so on, unlike the other cultures. So for me, I am Usama, the son of Jawdat, the son of Abdul Hadi, the son of Abdul Ghani, the son of Muhammad, the son of Abdul Rahman, the son of Abdullah, the son of Khanfar. And that's, goes about 200 years, all of them born in Silt al-Dhahir in Palestine. I just wanted to know if Akram or you can go also, as much as possible in terms of how many generations of her ancestors lived in Palestine. Of course, if I want to go further than that, according to some historians, my family is Tamimiyin, so we go about 1,500 years into Palestine.
I actually tried to trace this once. I couldn't, because there had to be some sort of archive or something, and we don't have access to the thing that is in Palestine. So we couldn't do that. And I don't think Akram, but I'll ask her. Okay, she's translating to her. عم يسألك
تعرفي اسم أبوكي وجده وجده وجده.
تعرفي إنه النسل تاعك يعني قديش صار لكم بفلسطين النسل. لهناك يعني بتوقفي، يعني هذا بس اللي بتعرفيه. خليكي محلك. Okay, so so it's not something that easy what you're talking about to try to trace.
أنا عائلتي بيت السعدي وآخذة من بيت عطايا الزيب. الله يحفظك. أما بعرف أبوي فتح الله وأبوي عبد الحميد والأب الثاني عبد القادر لحد دون.
Yeah, and I once asked my family, and that they told me that they have been existed there for 200 years. That's how much they could trace, and then
The second question: what gives you hope and determination? Given all of the things that are going around, and that more and more people are becoming refugees, and the Palestinian with the current government in the U.S. and all of that, it seems like our dream is getting further and further. So what gives you hope and determination and believing that actually this is not a dream, it's going to be a reality?
You know, when we look at how the apartheid ended in South Africa, how, I don't know, how Berlin Wall and, you know, just was broken down. When we look at this kind of things or historic events, they do give us hope, you know, because at some point people did not believe that these things would ever happen. And I don't think that evil can win at the end. So there is always hope. So we have never lost hope. And I'm sure if you ask the same thing to Akram, she would tell you that there is hope, and we are sure. You don't. I know that you may not believe that, but we in the camps really know that we are the ones who are going to witness the return. We know, we believe it, and from the bottom of our hearts that we are the ones who are going to return back to Palestine. Yeah, and this is not like dreams or anything like that. No, it's reality that we are going to witness. But how we do that?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair for giving the talk. I appreciate it. As a student here at UAB, I just had a question on what is the process for Palestinians and the ones who come over? Like, as refugees, is it difficult to leave your refugee camps, and what's the process, especially coming to America?
To leave the refugee camps, like to come here. Yeah, well, the first time we did the interview was in 2016, and did I say interview? I mean the tour. We did the tour in 2016. I had to apply for the visa twice because they wouldn't give me one. And then when they gave it to me, they said, well, we are giving it to you, but you are not qualified for that. So yeah, so it is really hard to get visas to any place in the world. But you know, we just tried enough times in order to get it. My parents just applied to a U.S. visa, and they both didn't get it too. So.
Just a comment regarding tracking your ancestors. The Turkish government, by the way, keeps all records from the Ottoman Empire. Mm-hmm. They have all records about all Palestinian families throughout hundreds of years.
Really?
Yes.
Where do I have to go to?
A lot of people have traveled to Istanbul to actually
I traveled to Istanbul.
I know we are one of them. A lot of families
I mean, where I have to go.
Well,
I'll talk to you.
The Turkish government kept all the records. She had.
I'll just talk to you when we finish.
Question.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
you
I
don't
know for sure that you can find it.
Okay. But thanks. Thank you.
Just your personal opinion about the peace talk. Do you think will lead
about
to
what?
Your peace talk they talk about between the Palestinian and Israeli? Do you believe on those peace talks that will lead somewhere, or the promise of return for the Palestinian? Or they're talking about these days the deal of the century or whatever? Do you believe in those things?
So if you guys, someone came and took over your house, this is a very simple question, and I know it's a cliche, but because someone comes and take over your house, he kicks out, like he kills most of your family members, he kicks the rest of them, he forces them to live in the backyard and then inside a tent for a couple of years, and then they decide that you guys have to get along, and then do you think that there might be peace while he's still living in your house and you're still kicked out and living inside a tent? Do you think it's logical to ask this question? I mean, not for you, but I mean people. Do they think that people would just, yeah, khalas, yeah, whatever. We will live in the refugee camps. That's okay, yeah. Do you think it's possible? I have mentioned that the right of return is an individual right, and no power or authority has the right to let go this right on our behalf. And I know about the deal of the century. And I really remember once I was listening to it on the radio in a taxi, and they were talking how they would just, we're talking about getting rid of the Palestinians and just throw them in a desert in Sinai. And I swear, I just started to cry. Like, how would people just think that way about a group of other people? It doesn't make any sense, but it does not mean that people will just do it. It doesn't mean that we are okay with that. You know, the PLO can do whatever they want.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we have time for about maybe 3 more. So.
Thank you so much. This is a really excellent presentation. Been really eye-opening, and I was really struck by the way that you really own and know your story and the story of your people. And I was wondering how growing up that story was kept alive and that identity was preserved, because evidently the young have not forgotten.
So you're asking how we kept on just, okay, yeah. So inside, it's, first of all, it's really hard when you are born in a refugee camp not to ask questions. You know, when you go outside the camp and see all people living in regular, nice houses, and then you go back to your own house, which is inside a refugee camp, which is, you know, during winter it rains inside the house on you, during which, you know, I don't want to make it a tragedy, but it is something not nice. So it's hard not to, as a kid, not to ask questions. Why am I living here? And then, you know, kids watch stuff, you know, they watch movies and they keep on asking, why we don't have the spaces like that to play? Why don't we? And you have to tell them why. And then inside the refugee camps, when people escaped from Palestine, you know, as Makram was telling us, the whole village escaped. So when they escaped, the whole village would live in the same neighborhood, and they would name the neighborhood after their own village. And that's how we have Zib neighborhood, we have Kabri neighborhood, we have Haifa, so we named the whole area after the places that we were exiled from. And then when the kid would ask, why this is called Kabri, why this is called Zib, then we have to answer. And then also we have our kindergartens. The names of the kindergartens, the names of the schools, the UNRWA schools, are all after places in Palestine. So people are just not allowed to forget, even if they wanted to.
Hi, I'm in the UAB School of Public Health, and my question is going to be directed towards any success that non-for-profits or... Oh, I'm sorry about that. I was wondering about the success that non-for-profits and non-government organizations have had, if any, in alleviating the misery in the refugee camps in Lebanon. Do you know of anything like that?
So what he's saying is, are there any organizations, non-profit organizations that assist the Palestinian refugees in their refugee camps?
Yeah,
and are they successful?
Yeah. No. So basically there are a lot of NGOs in the camps, but these NGOs just implement what their agendas tell them to implement. Does that make sense? Like, they won't help people in their education, but they would help people in projects that would end terrorism inside the refugee camps. And that would be, you know, teaching people to dance and to play music, and you know, that's the type of NGOs we have. I mean, there must be 1 or 2 NGOs that, but I honestly don't like NGOs. So,
is it possible to start an NGO that would provide education, or is that something that is politically not allowed?
No, actually, it is possible. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, I think we're going to let this be our last question of the night.
Just to let you know, we have a big folder, poster out there. We are trying to have a movie called Sultan and the Saint. It's a very beautiful movie. It's about an hour long. And we are trying to invite the non-Muslims. So if you are interested, my phone number is on the poster. You can take a picture and contact me later on. We're particularly interested in working with the churches and synagogues. And a gentleman from Washington, D.C. would be willing to fly out here for this. So let me know. The poster's out there.
Also, Jerry Levin, who was a CNN reporter in 1984 that was kidnapped by Hezbollah. He has done a lot of research and to show how the Palestinians were removed, and he has it on his computer and puts it up on the screen and does a good job with it, just like a report. Jerry Levin, he's supposed to be speaking over at the Unitarian Church in about a week or two, as they're going to use the rooms there to use. It's not part of the actual service, I don't believe. It's just they're using the space, and I've been to it before, and it's very good.
You can see their plight. So if there's any larger amount than what we are collecting here, please open up your hearts and your purses, because this is very painful to see what's going on. As you can see, the housing is just miserable. So, and as we know, we have got problems all over the world, Burma and Palestine and Kashmir and Yemen and God knows how, everywhere we got issues, and we are doing all the best we can. And I think we're stopping. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much for listening and for attending.
And as I said, we have some more snacks and literature. We'll be there another few minutes. And thank you again. Before I forget, I forgot to thank Brother Yusuf Al-Sabah. He hosted this family for 2 nights, and we want to thank Allah for such a nice, big-hearted brother. Thank you.